Look, if you're new to anime or want to give anime a shot, avoid this one tag if you don't want to have a bad time, at least at the start. Let me explain why. In recent years, I got more into anime because I no longer found high-quality entertainment in Western media. While Hollywood is faffing around with identity politics, subverting exploitation, and other personal political agendas, I could enjoy a wide range of unique stories coming from the other end of the world. Anime has a lot to offer, and there's many different genres for everyone to find pretty much anything they want. Want an anime where a character is a vending machine? Boom, we got that. Want Harry Potter, but Harry Potter uses brawn instead of magic? There you go. But that doesn't mean that anime is not without its unique quirks that may put some newer viewers off. While there is a segment of anime fans who hiss at normies when they try to get into anime,
normies, get out!
I for one want to encourage people to give anime a shot and not scare them off with the more cultured anime picks. This is why I wanted to talk about this one tag I think many anime newcomers should avoid. It's a shame too, because there's a lot of great anime featuring this tag, but if you're not familiar with the Japanese culture, humor, and outlook on perversion, you may conclude that a lot of anime is just weird, degenerate, and immature form of art. And I say this despite my love and admiration for anime. For those new to anime or those who are unaware of anime genres, ecchi translates into something like sexy, but is ultimately there to inform the viewer that the show will have sexually suggestive or risky themes. It doesn't sound that bad, but the creators of these anime are very liberal with the word suggestive, teetering at the edge of being downright hentai. Ecchi has evolved beyond just being a warning label though, as the tag became its own genre with its own storytelling techniques, tropes, and style that is very unique to anime and manga. I still call it a tag though because ecchi normally doesn't have its own setting. It could be an adventure anime with ecchi, it could be a horror anime with ecchi, it could be a slice of life comedy with ecchi. It's a tag that often sticks to other genres rather than being its own thing. It's often like a tumor, where for the most part it's pretty benign, but in other cases it can destroy anything good about an anime. I think one of the biggest problems with the ecchi tag is that it doesn't make it clear how much the anime will focus on those sexual themes. So it's always a gamble whether you will watch some light sexual tension between two characters or you will be bombarded by booba. I almost feel like this tag needs to be split into more categories like light ecchi, strong ecchi, and pure ecchi, or something like that, just to prepare the viewer for the amount of smut they will be exposed to. It would help curb one's expectations of how much story they should expect and save them from the disappointment. Ecchi will be a tough sell to most people in the West, and no matter how much you sugarcoat it with deep character and story analysis, it will most likely fall on deaf ears to people who are just going to see the degeneracy. You can watch a bunch of analysis videos about the brilliance of Kill la Kill, about its unique art style, about the character development, the cinematography, but in the end it's still an anime with schoolgirls stripping out of their clothes to fight each other, and it will be challenging for me and many other people to see it as more than that.
I mean, it's disgusting. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever read, but the plot is amazing, and the characters are so vivid.
If you guys dip me in the oil, everyone's gonna see right through my uniform!
Oh, man. Oh, this...
I know, Randy, but trust me, you gotta push through to the end.
No, that's just wrong!
Randy.
Now, would Kill la Kill be improved if we took out the ecchi elements? I don't think so. After all, the over-sexualization found in this anime is part of the show's unique art style and quirky plot. Taking that away would turn Kill la Kill into something more generic. Still, I personally cannot recommend this anime to anyone who's just starting out with anime. And honestly, I hate the fact that I cannot recommend a lot of ecchi anime because of the amount of lewdness and fan service found in them. Even if I believe there's a lot of good storytelling that can be found in there too.
Well?
It's awesome. Sharon, it's the best book I've ever read.
I'm a sucker for interesting story concepts, and I'm willing to put up with the ecchi tag if the story is good enough. But even then, I keep imagining how much storytelling we could have had if we replaced the obligatory beach episodes and the hot spring scenes for something a bit more meaningful and unique. Many manga or anime creators would argue that adding ecchi elements improves sales in an already highly competitive form of entertainment, and I can understand that. If a few beach episodes can increase sales enough to get you a season 2, then why not, right? It's not much different from adding sexy scenes in Western movies to get more people into seats. And just like all art, you can do it tastefully or you cannot. Though I still see it as a bit cynical. There are plenty of examples of manga and anime that don't rely on ecchi to be successful. So no Frieren is a smash hit, and it doesn't have any ecchi stuff besides the occasional intimate shot or a booba joke. The creators had confidence in the story they wanted to tell, which I think greatly benefited in the show's mainstream appeal. I think adding ecchi stuff to a story that doesn't need it ultimately harms the storytelling rather than improves it. I had the same problem with Mushoku Tensei, or Jobless Reincarnation. It's a beautifully drawn and cinematic anime with quality that is difficult to find in the isekai genre. It has outstanding visual storytelling and does contain a deeper meaning behind Rudeus as a character. It's a story about a jobless recluse who gets another chance at a happy life after being reborn in a fantasy world. Sounds like your typical isekai anime, I know, but this one explores trauma and the impact it has on the rest of the person's life. Rudeus was a loser who was severely bullied at school, which was the reason why he became a shut-in. He isolated himself from everyone else and delved into degeneracy and escapism. But now, Rudeus has a new life with loving parents, away from modern obsessions, and yet, the trauma of his past still haunts him, which he tries to overcome through his adventure. It's a fairly straightforward setup with great storytelling potential. Luckily, the show delivers on a lot of that potential, though you still have to sit through Rudeus being a complete little pervert. The show tries to justify that by trying to explore Rudeus' understanding of relationships. After all, most of his experience with women was from sleazy dating sims and pornography. So it would be very interesting to contrast that against more realistic depictions of relationships. But I don't think the show does that juxtaposition well, especially when Rudeus keeps encountering the very generic setups and fan service that he would find in sleazy dating sims. It's very strange when a show seems to be critiquing sexual obsessions, but also benefits from the use of those sexual obsessions. It's a bit like the Netflix movie Cuties, where the film tries to critique sexualizing kids by sexualizing kids. It's strange. It just seems a bit hypocritical, that's all. But if Season 1 of Mushoku Tensei wasn't explicit enough for you, then perhaps Season 2 will be, as Rudeus attends the College of Magic to overcome his biggest challenge yet, erectile dysfunction. And sure, one can argue that erectile dysfunction is a mature subject that would be interesting to explore in a fantasy setting, and does also complement Rudeus' character growth from being a degenerate towards learning to actually have true feelings for someone. I guess I personally don't like how direct the show is about that. Typically, fantastical elements such as monsters, fantasy worlds, and magical powers are often allegories or metaphors that creators use to explore real-life issues, and thus can express their views on those issues in more creative and diverse ways. In Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, Peter loses his powers because he suffers from self-doubt and other psychological issues. One could interpret his inability to use powers as an allegory for erectile dysfunction. Both Peter and Rudeus have to overcome their internal challenges that are holding them back, but I much prefer the allegory of Spider-Man 2's approach rather than Mushoku Tensei's. It encourages the viewer to think a bit more about the superpower and what it could mean, whereas Mushoku Tensei just says what it is. Mushoku Tensei does storytelling pretty well, and the ecchi stuff is an integral part of Rudeus as a character, but I still kinda wish it wasn't. It is the story that the author wants to tell, and I can't necessarily critique it too much, because the writing is consistent with the character and the world. But it's kinda like making a war movie and one of the soldiers has to hide in a women's hot spring to get away from the enemy. Technically it's consistent, but man, you're desperate to ride that hot spring scene, aren't you? Much like many other art snobs with the film degree, I do have a bad habit of expecting too much from the media I watch.
Here, we have the protagonist, but where's the antagonist? Huh? Where's the drama?
I often fall into the trap of reading the synopsis and already coming up with all kinds of different themes and cool story beats that the show could have, which only leads to disappointment when none of those ideas are utilized. Now, it doesn't mean I'm upset that the creator didn't use my ideas. I'm upset they didn't use any interesting ideas, especially when the premise has so many good opportunities. But no, it's ecchi, and the creator apparently just wanted to draw middle school girls stripping out of their clothes and doing questionable things. And who am I to stop them and their audience from enjoying their smut?
Fess up, you little perv. I know this is what you like to draw.
I'm of course talking about Mahou Shoujo ni Akogarate, or Gushing Over Magical Girls. I don't know how the show came under my radar, but I heard it's going to be one of those hot new releases and everyone's going to be looking forward to it. I read the synopsis and I was optimistic about it. Here's the premise. Hiragi Utena is a typical, shy, middle school outcast who doesn't have any friends. The only joy she does seem to have is her passion for magical girls who exist in this world. But in this world, the magical girls are like superheroes, who are known to the public. Think like Sailor Moon, but as a Marvel's Avenger. They have action figures of them, merch, photo shoots, all that good stuff. Utena idolizes these magical girls, and one day, a magical mascot creature shows up and offers her the power to be a magical girl too, which sounds like a dream come true, but turns out she was given the power to be a villainess and is forced to fight against the magical girls she idolizes. Think of it like you thought you were going to be a Power Ranger, but instead you got the role of Rita Repulsa. And I'll be honest, I love the premise, because there's so much you can do with it. and so much subtext to get out of this premise alone. The fact that Utena is given the role of a villain could be metaphoric of how social outcasts are often seen as villains by their peers, while the popular kids, or in this case the magical girls, get admiration, friends, and status. In the first episode, Utena doesn't even want to battle, but the magical girls are so used to fighting villains, they just see her pleading as deception. Again, all great concepts to explore social stigma where it's okay to beat up bad guys because, well, they're bad guys. The story could have also been a hero's journey for Utena, as the power and role of a villainess could allow her to gain more confidence and even start to see the flaws and weaknesses in the hero she idolizes, learning to appreciate and value herself more than idolizing someone else. Maybe she learns to accept herself for who she is, which allows her to make more friends and have a more fulfilling life. Or it could just be a thin veil to drape over copious amounts of kinky, degenerate smut. Come on, seriously? You had such a good premise here. Why did you have to go and make it anime? Again, really liberal with that ecchi tag here, guys. You sure you don't want that nice H tag and just be done with it? I felt so dirty watching this, I had to go rewatch Spy Family to recharge my wholesomeness levels. And often I can try to look past this exploitation if the story is good enough, the same way I do with, like, say, Overlord, but I don't think I can do it with this show, because it just seems to be powered by sexploitation alone. And the more I watched it, the more I was getting annoyed, because I could see glimpses of the character development and subtext I was hoping for. But then, nope. More kinky stuff. I checked out the manga too, and the smutty elements were a lot more toned down compared to the anime. But any of the themes and subtext that I was hoping for were few and far in between. Mahou Shoujo wanted to tell a different story than what I was hoping for, but it doesn't mean they told it well. Like I mentioned about Mushoku Tensei, this anime is far too direct in the topic it wants to explore. If they want to explore BDSM relationships in the setting of magical girls, it can do that without actually showing this much BDSM, and in such an uncomfortable amount of detail as well. It would require a bit more creativity and subtlety, which sadly are not the show's strongest qualities. The hero-villain dynamic, especially in superhero stories, can often be interpreted as an allegory for relationships.
I'm gonna say something embarrassing here. I didn't have a nemesis until my late 20s.
Don't patronize me, Father. It's unbecoming.
It's true. I wasn't ready for one. You want your first nemesis to be special. Someone who you could see being your nemesis for the rest of your life.
So if the show wanted to imply a dominant-submissive relationship, it could have done that in less overt ways, letting the audience come to that interpretation rather than spelling it out. Someone also mentioned that the show is meant to be a parody of magical girl shows, which are full of almost BDSM-like encounters. I can see that more in the manga maybe, but the anime made the encounters between the heroes and the villains way too sexual, where I don't even see the humor nor the parody. Again, it just seems like they wanted to show middle schoolers doing very questionable things. If you like that, this anime is for you, but for me, it was a wasted opportunity. On the topic of parody, I personally think that the best uses of ecchi themes is when it's done for comedic purposes to enhance the absurdity of the situation. Konosuba is probably my favorite example of that. Ecchi stuff does happen often, but it never feels cheap or exploitative. I mean, yes, it does appear cheap and exploitative, but you never feel the cynicism behind it. You can tell that it's there for a laugh, not titillation. Just watch the intro and pay attention to the amount of booba jiggle and suggestive camera angles. It's so absurdly overt that you can't help but see it as a gag. It's something that's hard to explain really, because you can probably show me examples of other shows doing the same thing, but I feel like Konosuba has just the right balance. It also helps that ecchi elements are actually used for character development and actually has narrative consequences, something that other ecchi shows lack. If I had to make a comparison, Gushing Over Magical Girls is as funny as a visit to Epstein Island, while Konosuba is more like watching CCTV footage of a very slippery changing room, and giggling at people in little to no clothes falling over. It's not necessarily highbrow humor, I can still see the amusement in it, and Konosuba manages to take full advantage of that absurdity. One of my favorite running gags is when the show establishes very early that Aqua doesn't wear any underwear. It doesn't really have any dark consequences or some kind of through line, but once you know that information, it stays in the back of your mind, and you're going to start taking notice of specific camera shots the show takes. But they never show anything, obviously. It's like Chekhov's gun, but in this case, I guess it's Chekhov's bum. I don't think I've ever seen a show where they establish something so non-consequential, and yet it affects how you watch the rest of it. Konosuba clearly knows what it is, and turns its lewdness into a joke to critique the over-sexualization of anime, rather than endorses it. Whereas Gushing Over Magical Girls fully embraces its degeneracy and offers very little subtext. It will come down to your preference and what you're looking for though. I think ecchi as an art form does have a place in media and can offer a wide variety of entertainment and insight. It may be an art form that I'm not exactly too familiar with or like all that much, but I can see there is some storytelling potential that other genres are not willing to explore. However, I'm still concerned about ecchi's prominence in anime and how it affects the perception that anime has in the mainstream media. With the decline of Hollywood and increased popularity of anime, it would be nice that the first impressions people have of anime is not ecchi. My biggest concern that ecchi, much like isekai, are falling into the same trap that the superhero genre did in the West, which is oversaturation. The anime world is full of generic, low-effort, ecchi anime that only rely on fan service and titillation to gain sales. And because people are buying them, they keep making them, putting less effort into the writing or crafting a better story. For every Frieren or Spy Family, you'll have to deal with 10 No Game No Life or Kiss Sis, and honestly, I don't like those numbers. However, I do see the counterpoint in favor of ecchi too. In the previous version of this video, Alejandro Locobesu did mention a very interesting idea regarding this topic. He suggested that if we had a slider between 0 to 100% ecchi, you will get a good return if you go 20% or even 50%, because you will satisfy ecchi enjoyers. If you have no ecchi whatsoever and do the same slider with 0 being a bad story and 100 being a great story, story enjoyers won't be satisfied with anything under 50%. So in this case, your chances of being published are even slimmer, because now you're competing with better written stories and ecchi manga. It's an interesting and believable theory, which could explain a lot. The worst thing that anime can be is boring, so if it at least has some fan service, it's better than nothing, I suppose. It would explain why some of the more interesting story concepts usually have ecchi elements in them. And if getting some interesting concepts means I have to deal with some random big-breasted character popping in just to titillate the audience and enforce some generic anime tropes, I guess I'll have to cope with it.
Ma'am, we located the droid signal. Apparently, it's just making YouTube videos about anime. Is it really worth the risk of being discovered by humans?
Don't be fooled by its trickery. These droids are highly adaptable. It took on an innocent and harmless persona to disguise its true destructive nature. But if you let it fester, it will grow in influence and power. And eventually, the only thing left out of that planet is rubble and remnants of a civilization.
Can a single reconnaissance droid even do that?
It doesn't matter. I'm not giving it the chance.
As I said, if you're new to anime, I recommend you avoid this tag until at least you familiarize yourself with the wholesome options, and then you can start to delve into the degeneracy of the anime world and become a true cultured weeb. If you would like some anime recommendations, you can find my anime list in the description below. This one was actually a revised video of the one I posted earlier last week, but after receiving some constructive feedback, I thought I'll elaborate more on my points and try to come off as less aggressive than I did in the first time around. I appreciate you subscribing and sticking around as I continue to make better content for you. If you want to chat and discuss other topics, why not join me on my Discord? I hope to see you there.